Hi, everybody. We have a few questions, and I just want to make sure that everybody is okay. I hope everything is going well for everybody in these kind of weird times. And you're washing your hands and keeping about 6 feet away from each other and trying to be as pleasant with yourself as possible. I have a few questions here. One of them is from Jennifer Butler. She asks, on a global scale, do the current circumstances point to the fact that the human species is experiencing a major shift? If so, are we meant to suffer in order to grow? Or is there another way to think about what's happening? And is it possible to actually effectively help during these circumstances? Wow. There are so many different types of views on this one. One especially is held by many that if you don't have pain, no gain. The old way of thinking in sports was exactly that way. You work your body so hard and you create muscles that are not really there yet, and over time they are, but you suffer through a tremendous amount of muscular pain, and then somehow it helps you an awful lot because you're cultivating muscles. Well, that may be partly true, but it's not necessarily if you've ever played any real sports. In other words, some difficult sports with difficult competition, you know full well that that doesn't always work. And most of the time, it doesn't work. However, in spiritual territories, sometimes people actually say that if you don't go through hard times personally, then you can't understand how other people are. And in fact, it's very strange the way we engage with life. People can have a really quite an okay, decent life, but they don't have any idea about whether it's decent or not. They find fault with their circumstances because they've been trained literally internally to find fault with the world, because it makes them feel much more secure in the doing of these things. I hold the idea to be more true that there is an engagement with higher states for the purpose of helping the individual to understand existence in a much broader way. This may be useful, this concept, under some circumstances, probably not very useful if you get run over by a car and you've done nothing to deserve such a thing, one could say. But it isn't necessary to actually be hurt to learn how to grow. It just doesn't make any sense to me. When an act of love or energy allows you to do almost anything with your life and then complain after it works or doesn't work, or be happy because it did work or didn't work, it really basically puts a lot of attention on the actual cultivation of the individual itself and how it may be real or not real, but the individual is not really trained to be an adult. They're trained to engage with life in a manner that helps them to feel more comforted by what they believe, or if they don't believe something, they become much more critical, and that makes them feel comfortable. But there is perhaps a global lesson. I've written some stuff here in response to the question. I don't think I've touched on that stuff, and I may or may not. But the issue here is trying to understand, there's in this particular question, there's another question by, maybe I can tie the two of them together, by Haley Falco and in Brampton. And I'll give you hers question as well at the same time, hopefully not too confusing. But she says, I have a question for you about softening intensity versus recognizing the feelings. When I'm feeling something like sadness or anxiety, I have a hard time balancing out whether I should soften the intensity down or recognize and acknowledge what I'm feeling. When I'm feeling something uncomfortable and try softening down the intensity, I almost feel as though I am dismissing it or trying to avoid it. Now, this is how we're trained. I almost feel as though I am dismissing it or trying to avoid it. I'm swimming in the intensity and I can feel very uncomfortable. This makes sense. Can you talk about this and what can we do to help release some of the intensity? Yeah. Our personalities are very sophisticated. Everyone's, right from the coarsest ones to the most elegant, majestic ones. And in those cases, they don't let anybody know that they're elegant and majestic. And then there are coarser ones who become their version of elegant and majestic, and so they have to let everybody know. This is fine. It may sound narcissistic, and it might be to some degree, but it also is a protective aspect, and it's complicated. Acting out the way you do is trying to help you to be comforted personally by you, most times unknowingly, because you feel uncomfortable generally. And in this whole venue of life and venue of a personality and its development as a construction, as a form, to be able to live here on these planes that are fairly coarse, no matter how able you are or unable you are. There is a coarseness about them related to how to function on a day-to-day basis and make a name for yourself. Become comfortable with the idea of you or the image of you, and that image or images within you have an early warning system. That early warning system is out there pervasively. It's an energetic system. It's cultivated from the time of your birth, not very knowingly, but at the same time knowingly, because early on we have relative protection from that which might hurt us, whether it be parents or people who want to help us in our journey, teachers that try to help us to learn how to do things. Live life is one of those things. And there is always a rendering, a way of thinking one has to be validated, not necessarily consciously, but kind of consciously, but reflexively, unconsciously as well as consciously. And there's an early warning system that expresses itself in terms of feeling. You cannot, if you have a pain internally, emotionally, or a reaction to something, externally or internally, that's part of the early warning system. However, we're not trained to say, okay, early morning, or I keep saying morning. Maybe I'm tired. I should go to bed. But early warning system, easy now. I already know that you're warning me about something. You don't have to intensify it. I recognize it. We don't normally say these things. If you try to say something like that, then the next level, it causes a pause, a kind of softening of the system that is warning you. Because these things are basically unconscious most of the time, we try to make sense of them based on how we see what's going on in our world currently or in the past, or perhaps a projection into the future. We try to do these things because this is part of the makeup of us, how we have been alerted and therefore can resonate to how life probably is, according to our teachers, according to people who are trying to help us to understand what things should look like, how we should do things, how should we engage with life. And of course, we have other aspects in us that say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do the way I believe things should be. And they either work out or they don't work out, or somewhere they're in the middle of things. But the early warning system still exists. If you feel uncomfortable, the discomfort is the early warning system. Then you recognize it. Then you can soften it down, but you haven't lost the idea that something is telling you something's off a bit from how you normally think things should work out. You can look at that in a couple of different ways, obviously. That your method of seeing how the world or you should work out may not be broad enough yet. It may be slightly different than how you think things should be. And for most of us, that's usually true. However, we may defend easily, reflexively as well, because that warning system is part of us, but it needs to be defended too, because it's an emotional system, could be even physical, it could be even a mental system, that it's defending how you've already constructed how you think you should be. That's part of what I call those images that we have in relationship to our own existence. These things are not negative at all, but they may not be fully developed. And when they are fully developed, you have a right to re-engage with them and reconsider what you believe they need to be like. In other words, you have a right to broaden out and continue to grow until you know your body can, and your mind and your emotions can no longer call you a personality. That means you've moved on into another state, perhaps, if we look at it from that point of view. So there's no negativity attached to it. Now, there is the added feature. Okay, then, Ron, if that's true, then is it possible that I can learn how to soften it down, but still look for how this early, or why this early warning system is trying to alert me? Oh, is it because the images that I already have and I call me are telling me something will make me different if I'm not careful? Because that's their nature. That's what they have to do. They have to tell you this. If you notice sometimes and you engage with them, you will notice that if you engage with them and try to figure something out, something tends to shift unless you're only focused on the intensity, the warning system, the emotion. And then you start blaming somebody else for it or blaming yourself for it. And in fact, what you're doing is protecting the warning system and how it was trying to tell you something, but you didn't look to see if there was something afoot in you that was nervous about shifting. Normally, this works in tandem with the need to remain the same as we were yesterday. Well, this is not negative. This is just something that we don't know very much about consciously. And our vulnerability is wondrously sensitive. That vulnerability, it works hand in hand with the warning system. Vulnerability is, are we devalued by being something slightly different than what we were before? There is a great fear that is internal and quite reflexive. If anyone says, oh, you're not doing the right thing, pooh, you can say, oh, okay. What would it mean? What should I be doing? And then they say something because they're looking at you in the same way you're looking at them. Remember, they're looking from their perspective at you with their early warning systems, with their beliefs, their orientations, how they see that life should be. They cannot enter into you because their focus is on their own personalized version of existence. This is natural. This is normal. They don't know that they're using energy to express themselves. They don't realize that. And they don't realize that they're transmitting their interaction with them into you so you can be more like them. They don't know that. Or they may not even know that you are sincerely giving them something that might be helpful from your perspective. That's why it's so important to be okay with you reconsidering or considering something to see if it actually would be okay. That sounds like a lot of mental work. It's not, it's more emotional work because you react to these things. Early warning system says, help, look out, careful now. You may change the way you are. Yeah, legitimate. It's true. Is the same thing true for others on the planet? Is the same thing true for nations and their images, for states, for provinces, for counties, for cities? I don't care what it is. They are just corporate groupings. They are groupings of individuals who are attempting to go beyond unknown and known sometimes what they have already decided that should look like, whether it be country, state, province, I don't care what it is, just doesn't matter. If you look at it like that and ask the question, can I be helpful? Then it comes down to, is it allowable for me to be okay with softening, finding a balance that is slightly different than the one I already have? Is it okay for me to protect what I already have? What you've been doing for years, so you'll do it forever. You'll do it until you're not here in this form. But is it okay for you to see that? Well, here's the dilemma. If you already have an image that says there is only one way to look at things, then it will be harder for you to look at things. If you are hurting all the time, as an example, if you are high on yourself all the time, those two places are really difficult to shift and change. What if you're just an average person who's engaging with life, Jane or Joe, engaging with life in a particular way, and you're slipping along and same things seem to work out reasonably well with a few bumps along the way. Is it okay for you to become more consciously aware? Is it okay for you to gentle down the need to protect as much? You'll still protect what you believe has to be true, otherwise your world is in shambles. We all have this flavor of movement. It's movement. Even if you see it and say, no, 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 it's not okay, because if I don't do the things that I normally do that are attached to feeling this way or that way, then I will not be the me that I really am. Is it okay for us to see that that may be okay for you not to be the way you are? Because you're cultivating a you daily. I remember that old gem from St. Paul in the Christian Bible. I apologize for that, but it's in my head. He says he dies daily. Such a difficult thing to try to understand. In fact, if it were true, what he's saying, or was saying at one point, that he attempts to remake himself in a broader way related to an engagement with a state that one could define with the words that we normally define those states with, whatever your words are. If you were Hindu, you'd probably something like Brahm. You could say aligned with Christ, alignment with Allah, aligned with. You put the words in there. But that concept of shifting and engaging is let's say, a maturing concept. I don't think it's that simple. Maturing doesn't mean we're not adults. We're adults in a species. And the cultivation of this whole species relates to each individual being okay with broadening out their relationship with how they actually function on a day-to-day basis, because it changes what you project towards others, or transmits, if you want to talk energetically about it. But you still have those early warning systems, which, by the way, can be engaged with and softened down. They don't have to scream at you for you to catch on. But you have to train yourself to be willing to listen quietly when you notice something. So you're training yourself to notice more so they don't scream as loud. But now one can also say, if they scream loud, then that becomes part of your persona, the way you think you have to have them to be you and place you in positions that validate how you were trained. None of that is negative. And for that matter, there's no rule or law that says you have to change anything. But if you're uncomfortable, softening down doesn't take away the recognition of you being vulnerable. All you're doing is gauging the vulnerability, the warning system about the way you are being somehow in jeopardy. And it's not in jeopardy of total annihilation. It's in jeopardy of you shifting something inside differently than you could yesterday, because everything relates today and yesterday. If you are looking at today, then there is a oneness internally that you can attest to. I am today what I am. That's what I am. Tomorrow, if I shift something today, I will be tomorrow what I am tomorrow. And that will be okay. That includes the early warning systems. That includes your disinterested in shifting anything, includes your interest in shifting anything. It includes the willingness to allow a pause within the reflex to maintain how you are. And that slight pause will help you to understand a little bit more daily what's causing a vulnerability. A simple thing like, oh my God, if I change, I will be different. But what will I be? You'll be as you are today. Plus, a broader understanding or view of how you respond, and you may even shift a response. If you do, remember, you got to give the people around you just a couple of minutes to recover from you being yesterday a you, and now today you're a different you. Now, if you judge them for not reacting in the same way as they did yesterday, then you have forgotten that you have changed. It's an interesting dilemma. But nonetheless, these questions are fantastically interesting because they are deeper questions. And that means fundamentally that each individual takes a part of a shift in a whole multiplicity of forms called humanity. Yes, I agree. There are those who have their foot on the pedal stronger than we do. But remember one thing. There are people coming into our plane that come in relative to the plane. If the plane begins to shift a little bit, different forms of people will be okay to engage with these planes. I've talked many, many, many times in a new DVD coming out, hopefully fairly soon, by describing a number of people who I've been very fortunate to meet beyond my understanding, actually, why that could be so, but who are really extremely able beyond our understanding. We can hardly believe that these kinds of people exist. I'm not talking about your average able psychic engager. No, I'm talking about people who are able to engage and transmit 10,000 miles around the earth, as if it's just another thought. This is way beyond our pay grade as far as what we believe things should be like. And many of us have decided that only one or two or three or four people could do that. And I think those one or two or three or four people could do that, but many more have been able to do that before and after in a different way, because we don't allow people who are different to be comfortable in our environment. So they just don't let us know. Learning how to perceive within you and acknowledge, understand, and respect the you that you are. My gosh, there is so much beyond what we believe we can be in terms of compassion, in terms of caring, loving, in terms of understanding others, being able to acknowledge the relationship that they have with them being difficult to deal with. And so therefore, they're under duress all the time. But they are perhaps within the purview of all of us, let's say, there can be some changes that we can be a part of so that we feel more confident in allowing ourselves to move in a direction that can allow a different understanding than the one that we already have. Within our personalized training, as we've come to these points in relative adulthood, and relative adulthood includes being okay with developing beyond where we are now. It's a kind of maturity. There are various kinds of maturity, one could say, depending on what one culture says about their version of maturity. The one I'm talking about is where you engage with all cultures and you acknowledge the fact that enculturation isn't the only way of being important. I mean, the naming of a certain kind, the naming of a certain way to look, a skin color, the way you engage, a hair color, how you allow people to be valued, the nature of existence. Each individual human being is literally engaged with the same methodology. In my view, you don't have to agree with it, but these chakras, zephyrat, fireballs, these valves through which energies flow, if you can perceive them, and I'm not talking about colors and all that, knowing where they are in another and in you, then you know for sure that every individual who exists has them. There's more than what we understand. But once we start understanding something, we like stopping understanding. It's like we're on a bus. We want to get off at a bus stop. We don't want to go on a farther journey. Whoa, that's discovery. That means, holy smokes, we might not be in agreement with others. And they won't think that we're very able. They'll think we're kind of dumb for thinking the way we do. This occurs in every living focus. Science is the same thing. Literature, gosh. Spirituality, wow. None of it is negative. It's where we are. What I'm saying, in relationship to these questions, there is an opening that can occur within that allows one to move beyond where they are protecting the need to be the way they are. This is very difficult for us. I don't care who it is. I don't care how broad you believe you are. It is very broad. It's huge. I often think of this one little kid one time I met back in the early 70s who had a crown center that was so profoundly strong. He was a thalidomide baby, but he was around 8 or 10. But he had a perception that was really interesting. It was way beyond what we can perceive. And he ran, we were in a hospital, which is kind of for people that may never survive the hospital in our city. And he ran up the hall and he jumped on my chest and turned my heart center on, my chakra, or whatever you want to call it, so profoundly I could barely stand the flow. It was so wondrous. He must have seen some little spark somewhere along the line and wanted to light it up. Trailing behind him, his head was about 18 inches, 12 to 18 inches. I don't know. I can't remember exactly how it was. I didn't have a measuring tape with me. Wide because it had water in it, a solution in it. He was such a giant of a being in spite of his physical system. But it doesn't mean that only terribly difficult physical systems are elevated. Many just have a normal system like you and I. You'd never be able to pick them out of a crowd no matter what, because they wouldn't let you. Not because they're shy, it's just because more can be done through having energy operate through them for a broader purpose. And we don't understand those purposes as well, but they link towards a maturity in relationship to humanity. This is huge. As long as I'm able to be alive here, I'll keep reminding or talking about them, because they are the ones that are helping us beyond. And we then can learn how to help ourselves in the way we can, to the best of our ability, without an idea that there is a goal. The goal is a little bit of help helps. You will see differently tomorrow than you do today. Whatever that tomorrow happens to be, 6 months, 10 years, 15, 20 years, I don't care. It doesn't matter. What it does matter is that the engagement that you have today with you is along a continuum related to a species called humanity. And you are very much a part of everyone else's way of engaging with life. They have a warning system. They respond automatically to it. Some cannot even figure out that that's even true. Some blame everybody for any response they have. Some blame hardly anybody because they're going the opposite direction. And somewhere along the middle, and there's a whole big canopy all the way through from one edge of it to the other, is a view that allows us to understand that somewhere in there, if we shift just a little bit, we help us. We finally learn a little bit about learning how to love us. It's not the business of letting you do whatever the heck you want. No, it's not like that. It's learning how to be okay with being a helper for you as well as others. This is not so simple, because we've already made decisions about how we are and what we are and why we are and all the rest of it. These are strong definitions. Habits of engagement, not negative, just habitual. Don't tell anybody about it. When you're using and engaging with these things, it's not necessary to tell anybody else. You end up just building up yourself and your view, as opposed to sticking with trying to help you. That one is part of the very convenient way that we have of accomplishment. We set up a goal, we accomplish this, therefore we are really able, this kind of thing. It does nothing but build a very torturous identity structure, which means we have to be continually doing something and celebrating it, and also forecasting or broadcasting it to everybody else. It's really the way we have been trained. And there's no negation in it at all. It's just, this is where we are in our species, and that's where you and I are. And we're doing our best with it. I hope that helped a little bit. There's probably some writing here that in one case, for example, one way you can help is use energy fine. Open the hands, create a vortex, a triangular system. Ask for internally for help from a higher state, if you can be okay with that concept. Talk to yourself. Oh, what the heck is going on? Why am I reacting under these circumstances? Not out loud, inside. If you're alone, fine, talk out loud. But don't talk out loud. People will think you're a little bit weird. Well, if you are weird and you don't mind, you may be creating an image of weirdness. Notice you're creating an image of weirdness. And then you may want to shift that just a little bit. And you might. I don't know. You may not. Uh, Try to reason with yourself and try to be okay with the idea that you're doing this to try and help you to soften down your early warning system, but you're not trying to obliterate it because you can't do that. It's not going to happen. You're set up to have one. How it is relative. It's relative to your vulnerability and the way you think you have to be whatever your images are. And if you think you know what your images are, it might surprise you to know that most people don't. But they believe they do, but they have no idea. You becoming consciously aware of you, as if you're looking at you from outside of you, can be very respectful to you, kind to you, understanding to you, caring about you, and using just a few little things so that you're trying to be helpful in the day-to-day engagement, curiosity, discovery of how you function, but not for the reason of being perfect. It's nonsense. It doesn't work that way. But for the reason of noticing that your influence has touched you somehow so that you can know for sure that you can be helpful to you and truly, honestly respectful of you. It's a courageous thing. Shockingly, many people have the will to be okay with this, but just didn't know that it was okay to do it. It's not, in my opinion, okay to beat yourself up every day because it comes out of training most of the time. It's not okay to think you have the only idea in the universe that's exactly right. That comes out of training. Position and place. And the whole of the species. The greatest is at the top. The poorest at the bottom. Not necessarily true. We are very fortunate to be okay with us and continue to be okay in our broadening. Boy, look at, I got this far with what I am. Wow, it's okay. Is it okay to broaden it out a little bit? So it'll give me at least a little broader idea of what I might be expressing, be sensing inside. My God, am I really a sensor of emotion? And if I am, my heavens, in through that emotion, how did it get there? You mean I used energy all along I didn't even know I had coming into me to create a warning system because I was trained to notice in others unknowingly that an early warning system was important? Wow, we're quite a composite of expression. Much beyond what we tend to understand consciously. Experiential engagement is vital in the recognition of the being that you are and being okay as that being and moving forward like you would if you were 2 or 3 with conscious awareness, then you can grow. And whether that is called being a child again, as the Hindus and the Christians and the Buddhists and others talk about it, at least to some degree. Being okay with accepting and engaging a willingness within to understand beyond what you can understand now, to recognize what you recognize beyond what you recognize now, to be okay with you as an individual as opposed to cultivating a criticism around what you can never attain, to move beyond an understanding or relationship with perception that exists, but not necessarily in the codex that we believe should be currently, enables us to move forward and investigate slowly various states of life that are available to us, but not in the realm of verbalization necessarily, but in the realm of experiential orientations, discoveries. Doing research within you slowly and with great respect to what you are, but just respect. Others, as they do the research or explore into the inner worlds or broaden the external worlds, deserve respect as well. Whatever their view of the world or however they look, male, female, religious backgrounds, even political backgrounds, color, how they tie their hair, all of no interest whatsoever in the inner world of engagement with higher states. In our world, it's more difficult because our training is front and center. Our defenses front and center. Our fears front and center. Only a movement towards adulthood in a broader way can move against those kinds of resentments, jealousies, difficulties. Wow, talking like that to a world that already is settled on how things should be, in theory, or at least to some degree, muddied by where they have their footsteps, mentally, emotionally, and physically, and personally, makes it very difficult to make adjustments. And when you do make adjustments, there's no guarantee that everybody else makes the same exact ones. So compassion is a powerful, important concept and reality, necessary, so much, so very necessary. Otherwise, it's difficult for us even to breathe the same air as how we thought yesterday. Of course, everyone now has changed, right? Including myself. I hope you can see the humor in some of this, as well as the vulnerability that we all have as human beings related to how we already have constructed our worlds. And I'm talking about individual worlds as well as nation states. Thank you very much, everybody. I think that's enough for tonight. And we're now going to meditate for about 40, 45 minutes, something like that. So I wish you well. As time goes on, Marlene and I are cooking up some possible one-day seminars over a thing called Zoom. So more about that later. So I wish you all well. I hope everything works well with you. Take care. So now we can just begin to do the balancing and grounding. And good night.